Oh, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, the Three Topics Gamer, and I would just like to wish you all a happy International Women's Day, as I have a pretty special video to share with you guys today, as I'm sure you can tell from the title down below. Now, when it comes to the world of gaming, no one can argue that when it comes to women in gaming, there is no shortage of totally hot, sexy, and kick-ass women who are not just awesome characters because they can kick ass or take names and look sexy and hot doing it, but they're just overall great characters in their own right. They have their own unique story personalities that allows them to stand out. And I thought it would be a great time to share with you my personal top 5 favorite women badasses in gaming history. Now, before I get into this list, I would just like to ask if you do happen to enjoy this video by the end. I would really appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up and make sure to press the subscribe button to help me reach my end of the year goal. So, just to let you guys know, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of awesome women in gaming. And some that I personally don't even know all that much about, even though I know they're extremely popular because I'm just not particularly fond or just a fan of their particular franchise. So if there is a woman character that you really enjoy that isn't on my list, please do not take that personal. So, without wasting any more time, I'm going to start off with who I consider to be my number 5 favorite all-time badass woman in gaming. So, let us begin. Now, for number 5, we have to venture into the Devil May Cry franchise. And while over the course of Dante's illustrious career as a demon killer, he has made a number of great female allies. But the one that I would consider to be the most badass out of all of them has to go to Lady. Now, Lady is actually, really, to be quite honest, Dante's first real ally that he's ever made, and has known him all the way since the beginning of his demon killing career, all the way back in Devil May Cry 3. Now, what really, in my opinion, helps Lady stand out is the fact that out of all of Dante's allies, she's the only one who is purely a human. She pretty much builds all of her own weapons and uses her own physical skills in order to take down demons who have all of these advantages in terms of strength, power, durability, and total destructive power. But she doesn't let that slow her down. She pretty much uses her own unique abilities to take them down. And in some cases, she can even take on Dante and give him a run for his money. Now, where Lady, in my opinion, really is a cool character is her amount of development that she has made from where we saw her at the very beginning of her journey to how she is now. And you have to remember that Lady at the very beginning was a pure demon hating bitch. She did not like anything that was even remotely created that's just connected to demons. But over time, she did happen to learn that some demons aren't that bad. And it's her ability to warm up to those type of people that really helps her stand out. And overall, I can even say that while she kind of does get pissed off at Dante at sometimes, she does acknowledge him as a friend and someone that she can truly open up to, even though those moments are pretty rare. And I think that it is in itself a badass thing when a woman can show some levels of vulnerability but still stand up for themselves and hold their own. And that's something that Lady can absolutely do within the Devil May Cry franchise, which is why, to me, though she's not my favorite female Devil May Cry character, she, in my eyes, is without question the most badass female character in Devil May Cry history, which is why she holds the number 5 spot on my list. Now, when it comes to number 4, we have to venture into the Mass Effect franchise. And there is absolutely no shortage of truly awesome women that can become squad mates throughout the primary trilogy of the Mass Effect series. So, when trying to pick out who I would consider to be the most badass women out of all of them, it basically comes down to which one of these ladies I would not want to piss off the most. And as much as I love my girls Cora and Liara, the one girl on my squad team that I would not want to get on the bad side of, and that has to be Jack from Mass Effect 2 and 3. Now, Jack, I believe, is kind of like a genetically enhanced biotic, and she is just someone who is in a constant bad mood. But it's fair to understand as for why, because she's had a very, very rough childhood and development over the early parts of her life before she joins Shepard's squad. And I think that she has this really cool look when we first see her in Mass Effect 1 of having all these tattoos, kind of being bald-headed. She just emits this aura of, this is just not a woman that you want to piss off. But what's really interesting is her ability to develop as a character. Now, it is true that Jack can be a bit of a bitch and kind of have a bit of a hard-ass side to her from Mass Effect 2. But when you see her in Mass Effect 3, she has definitely developed as a character to not only being a truly great squadmate in Mass Effect 2, but she becomes a teacher and a pretty damn good one in Mass Effect 3. That is an amazing amount of development to go from where she was in 2 to how she is in 3. and she still holds up. She is still very much true to herself. She is not a woman that you want to mess with, which is why out of all the awesome Mass Effect women that can become your squad mates, companions, and even love interests, in my eyes, Jack is without question the most badass above all of them, which is why she holds the number 4 spot on my list. Now, for number 3 on my list, we have to go to the only female badass on my list that actually has her own game, and that has to go to Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, I usually consider Horizon Zero Dawn to be probably one of the best new PlayStation exclusive franchises that has actually come out in recent years, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the sequel when it comes out on the PlayStation 5. But what I really like about Aloy is not only the fact that this is a single woman who actually goes out and fights giant animal mechs, which that in itself is cool, but this is a girl who has a good heart, can stand up for herself, and does not take shit from anyone. Now, this is a girl who had a really, really tough childhood and has suffered her own amount of tragedies along the way, but she always manages to step up to the challenge and make it to the end, and that really makes her overall development throughout the entire first game of Horizon Zero Dawn really put her in a class by herself in terms of ultimate badass women characters that, in my opinion, has had the most amount of development. Now, don't get me wrong, Lady and Jack certainly have their good amounts of development, but I think that Aloy's journey was a lot more compelling than I think just about any other female character on this list. Where she kind of lacks, in my opinion, is simply the fact that there is simply more to learn, and there's so much more that we don't know about her. So I think if I had made this list maybe later on when, say, Horizon 2 comes out, I think I might put her higher up on this list. But besides that, she also can handle herself in just about any fight. I mean, her collection of weapons is very expansive. She has a pretty badass looking spirit, and she looks incredibly cool riding all of these kind of mount-like animals or mechanical animals all throughout Horizon. So for those reasons, I think she sits pretty comfortably in the number 3 spot on my list of female badasses in gaming history. So on to number 2. Now, number 2 on my list holds a very, very special and personal spot in my heart because not only is she probably one of the greatest female badasses in JRPG history, she was perhaps the very first female character I ever had a crush on, and that woman just so happens to be Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. Now, I cannot say enough things about this woman that, trust me, I could do my own top 5 list as for why I love this woman so much. She is, without question, my favorite JRPG female character of all time. I don't know why Cloud hasn't romanced her. I mean, that discussion is on its own. But when you really look at her place in the party, she's probably the most versatile fighter in her crew. Because you look at every other party member and they're all using fangs or swords or guns or spears or throwing stars. But Tifa is her weapon. She doesn't need her weapon. Her fist, her body is her weapon, and that requires an immense amount of discipline. And she don't take no crap from anyone. Now, she's not actively going out and looking for fights, but heck, if you try to put her in a fight, she is more than willing to step up and take a leadership position and can easily take down just about anyone that gets in her path. Now, it's true that early on, she wasn't quite like that, but when you take into effect the amount of torture that she had to endure early on, especially when Sephiroth completely destroyed her village and killed her father, then you can kind of understand where this anger is. And she took that fire and that anger and harnessed it into her own personal strength. And because of that, she is probably, without question, one of the most valuable characters in the Final Fantasy VII franchise. Plus, on top of that, she's only one of, say, 3 Final Fantasy characters that I actually have a figure of. And if my love for Tifa hasn't been illustrated enough, for those of you that have actually seen enough of my room, I have 2 giant posters for her in my room. She is the only female video game character I think is even worthy of being put on my wall as of right now. There's another lady who I will be talking about later on that is on its way here, but it hasn't quite arrived yet, but I'll talk about her later on. But for those reasons, that is why Tifa has to hold the number 2 spot on this list. So let's move on. Now, before I get into number 1, I feel the need that I need to add an honorable mention because I believe that when it comes to ultimate female badass characters, I think every list to some degree has to add one of the all-time iconic classics in the form of Lara Croft. I openly admit that I was not a fan of Lara Croft as she was in the classic period. However, I have become a big fan of her much more recent updated reboot version simply because I think that this version of Lara Croft has a lot more going into her in terms of character development and struggle, and shows a level of vulnerability that really I don't think the first interpretation of Lara Croft ever showed. And to see her development over the primary 3 games that has come out since the reboot really has allowed me to really appreciate this character for what she means to not only her own franchise, but the history of gaming. She is one of the all-time greats. The only reason why I wouldn't put her as a top 5 is because compared to all these other women on my list, she is just a little bit too basic. Not in terms of importance and development and struggle in her own, very unique story and development, but just she's just a survivor character that just knows how to take down the enemy and manage to overcome immense odds. And that's not such a bad thing, but there are other characters that I think can do that and just have a much more interesting backstory than she has, which is why I'm more than happy to mention her as an honorable mention, but I would not put her in my personal top 5. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into who I consider to be my number 1 favorite and all-time favorite video game female badass in gaming history. And that just so happens to be Makoto, or Queen, from Persona 5. Now, she is a newer character, but when I really have to compare her to Tifa, her and Tifa are kind of similar in the same form that both of these women use their fists. They both have good hearts. They both come from very, very tragic backstories in one sense or another. But in my opinion, the things that really allow Makoto to take the slight edge over Tifa is 2 things. Number 1, she has a much better and cooler badass look than Tifa. And though she is the total package of being a woman who not only uses her awesome persona, kind of uses a gun, which is, it's pretty cool because it's just a revolver, and also uses her fist and has a much awesome look, she has that just kick-ass bike. I'm sorry, I mean, Tifa, I love your baby girl, but man, that bike is just the cherry on the top. And she's overall a really cool character to romance. So, I mean, that was the main decision during my very first playthrough of Persona 5 that just decided as for who I was going to romance. It was in that moment I knew who I wanted to romance. And when you really look at Makoto outside of combat, she is just an intelligent character who wants to be, I believe, work in law enforcement, and that's something you don't really see much in other characters. You would not have expected her, and she is so mature for her age, and that, in my opinion, allows her to stand out very much on this particular list. Now, don't get me wrong, I would love to get a poster that has both Tifa and Makoto back to back, because I think that would just be a really badass pose. But it's just those little things that, to me, gives her the slight edge over the very first female badass that I fell in love with when I was a kid. So Tifa kind of represents who I loved as a kid growing up, and Makoto is who I love as an adult. And it is for those reasons that, in my opinion, she is ranked number 1 as my all-time favorite video game female badass in gaming history. So, now that you guys know who I would put as my personal top 5, who are the top 5 most badass female characters that you would acknowledge? Share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome. And like always, have a happy International Women's Day. I will see you next time.